Hi, everyone. Welcome to Centered and Heard, Empowering Youth in Their Adoption Journey. My name is Erica Settles. I am a social worker and permanency trainer with the Texas Institute of Child and Family Wellbeing, working on the Heart Gallery project, who is bringing you this webinar today. I also have experience with DFPS. I worked there for 12 years, and I was a conservatorship caseworker and supervisor in Region 6 in the Houston area, and then an adoption supervisor in Region 7. I also have Chelsea Castro and David Daniels presenting with me today, so I'll let them introduce themselves.
I guess I'll go. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Daniels, and I am the Transitional Age Youth Program Specialist with the Texas Alliance for Children and Family Services. I am also a lived experience expert. I spent 16 years in foster care in Houston, Texas, so it's Harris County. And I also have experience with adoption. And so in my role as a Transitional Age Youth Program Specialist with the Alliance, I worked extensively with extended foster care in partnership with an organization called Youth Villages. They have an intensive case of management model that they wanted to implement in Texas. And so one of those first things that we did were go around to the region, and we spoke to young adults across the region, state of Texas, and we spoke to frontline staff. And we just wanted to learn about the challenges and the barriers and the gaps and where we could support them in their extended foster care, learning about extended foster care in those particular regions. So we spoke to over 200 young adults who transitioned out of foster care and about 120 frontline staff. And so we're currently working to build out that report. And so we'll have that report for the top of the year 2026. I also do a little work with T3Cs, and we're also working on another initiative from the KC Foundation for their organization as well. So I got my hands on a little bit of everything, trying to, move the needle forward for young adults in permanency planning and youth in general. And I'll turn it to my colleague, Chelsea.
Hi, everyone. Chelsea Castro, and happy Youth Voice Month. I also work with David at the Texas Alliance and Family and Child Services. I am the Senior Permanency Resource Specialist here, where I help lead several permanency projects across the state, one of them being the expansion of child-focused recruitment through the Winnie's Wonderful Kids program. Before this role, I spent about 7 years in the adoption as adoption recruiter in the Houston area. So that experience really shaped my passion for elevating youth voice and making sure young people feel centered and heard in their adoption journey. So thank you for having me.
So moving into our objectives today, they are to understand the importance of youth engagement in the permanency process, to learn best practices for supporting self-advocacy and decision-making for youth, and to gain strategies and tools to create a youth-centered adoption experience. Now, these here are going to be some of the themes that you will see throughout the presentation. So youth engagement supports dignity, which is being worthy of honor or respect, and it instills a sense of pride in youth as well. It also supports youth voice, which is basically that the ideas, opinions, attitudes, knowledge, and actions of young people matter. So engaging them in the process shows them that their voice matters. It supports trust, and this includes self-trust as well as trust between youth and professionals and the other people that are involved in their lives. It also supports connection or relationship building. And then, of course, skill building, which is the process where youth are learning and improving their abilities over the course of their lives. And what we most want to point out here today is that when we engage youth meaningfully, we're not only preparing them for adoption, but we are preparing them for life. So we're helping to support life skills in them that they can take with them far beyond the time that we are present in their lives.
So why does it matter? So we're talking about building builds empowerment and emotional wellness, prepares youth for lifelong decision making and self-advocacy. And in my aspect of this, having had an adoption process and it was unsuccessful, I don't want to say failed, but it was unsuccessful. I tend to deal with the wholeness and the heart of the young person, the youth, the young adult that is being in this process, right? So it's not just because we ask for youth engagement for it to be hey, this is an opportunity to just, hey, have a say so or just be involved on a lower level. It's not that. It's not a nice to have. It is the foundation of for a healthy living outcome, lifelong living outcomes, right? And so we start with you can go to the next slide. So we start with empathy. We start with learning how to make decisions and for youth to advocate for themselves. When we're talking about youth engagement, we're really talking about the belonging and the empowerment. The empowerment means I feel heard. I feel capable of making decisions. I feel capable of standing on the decision that I made, meaning that I'm going to back up and believe and be confident in my decision. It equips them for lifelong decision makings and self-advocacy skills, as you've heard Erica say. These skills extend beyond the adoption process, right? And so emotional wellness is the processing of complex feelings. So one of the complex feelings for a young adult or a youth going through an adoption process or permanency plan is safety. They want to feel safe in the process. They want to know that they are allowed to have certain feelings, have certain voice, and still feel okay and protected and safe. Like it's not going to be a harm. It's not going to be a retaliation thing, right? And so I look at it from an aspect of we're reducing trauma because you've learned to trust adults and show consistency and transparency. And you'll hear this again over the course. So I want you to pick up on certain words and certain key things because I want to see how at the end will you be implementing these in your day-to-day work. Trust, seeing adults keep their word makes a difference for young people, right? And so many young people say, I don't want the decisions made for me. I want to be a part of those decisions. So when we communicate clearly and they learn that stability and belonging are possible, then that makes it for the next thing of the approach. So you got the understanding of the fundamentals of what this aspect is going to bring to them, but then you have the approach. For example, just asking simply this: what's most important for you in a family, right? Everyone has different things that they look for in a family. For me, it was honesty. For me, it was stability. You know, I come from a non-stable environment. The lights would get cut off. You know, we wouldn't know what we were going to eat for the next day. And so while other people wanted maybe parents with nice cars and a nice house and maybe a dog and just a couple of other siblings, I didn't care how many people was in the house. I didn't care if we drove a minivan with no tent. My important thing was the family honest? Were they honest and were they stable? When I come home from school, did I know that I was going to have a meal every day? Did I know that my bed was going to be there for me and wasn't going to be taken from me? So those are the things that we ask, and we actually have to listen to them. So when we talk about the approach, here's the approach. This is what it is. Validation, encouragement, and part equals a successful partnership. So when we talk about validation, it means simply this: just affirm the youth's feelings. Their experiences are valid, and we have to understand that and honor that. Even if they differ from ours as professionals and as adults, I never understood why my caseworker would disagree with something that had to do with my lifelong decision or where I would spend the rest of my life and grow with, without validating my feelings of, I don't think that they're a fit for me, or I kind of didn't get the best energy or the vibe when we first met. I mean, it got better towards the end, but I still feel a certain type of way. And it's okay for youth to have mixed feelings. So it's okay for them to start the process and then change their mind midway through the process, just as adoptive parents do that, right? And guess what? Their feelings are validated. So the youth have to be validated. And understanding when you're dealing with young people, hope and fear can exist in the same space during this process. They can still be joyous and happy at the process of finding their forever family, but they can also still be fearful about it might not work, or what if they don't like me, or what if I'm not what they expected, even to the down for me. I never forget being bullied in school because I was dark skinned, and then being bullied in school because everyone had nicer clothes or their parents would pick them up or come to PTA meetings and I didn't have that support. Going into a situation, meeting a family, and all have to know of you is a picture, and then you go into that's high expectation, that's high anxiety. Will they like me? Will they like the way I dress? Will they like my smile? Will they like my hair? So validation starts at the beginning of this approach. Validate the younger person over and over again, consistently throughout this process. And then encouragement means empowerment. We're going to empower them to use their voice even when it's uncomfortable. You know, they're going to say, well, I feel, I'm not going to say that because I don't want to mess anything up. No, say what you're going to say. Express yourself. What are your feelings? When you give them that, you highlight their strengths as well, because in this encouragement aspect, you tell them, hey, that was really critical of you to think that. I wouldn't even thought of that. Or that was a good question to ask these family members when we meet with them. That is a good thought. Asking about the school district, asking about how do they feel about family vacations? You know, how do they feel about children, young people making mistakes? What are their disciplinary uh, methods and models? You know, those are things that you say, that was a good thought. I like the questions that you asked, and I like how you got dressed and you cared about your appearance when you wanted to meet these potential family members. So encouragement goes a long way in that process as well. All of these things, these two components will lead to a successful partnership, right? Because when you walk with youth and not ahead of them, that means something to them, right? When you walk beside them through this process and not lead them, this means that you're sharing power and that you're co-creating the adoption story rather than steering it. When a youth says, I'm not ready to meet my new family, instead of pushing the issue, we might want to respond by saying, thank you for being honest. Can you tell me why you're not ready or what changed so I can better understand the situation? I didn't get that. You know, if I said, oh, I'm not ready. Like, I need to talk to my family members, or I need to talk to somebody else, my teacher or my coach. I would be met with, well, listen, the time is winding down. Like the clock, like it's not a lot of options. Like this family is good. I've known them for a long time, et cetera, right? And that doesn't always settle well with the young person because you're telling me that you know what's best for me in spite of my feelings that I'm not ready. So when they're not ready, it's okay to not be ready. Ask them questions that will lead to an understanding and also a partnership in time. Next slide, please. So when we talk about partnering with youth, you want to affirm the youth's identity, right? You want to prioritize the youth's emotions, allow the youth to co-author their adoption story, said that before, that's going to be repetitive, and create a space for difficult conversations. Partnering, true partnership and ownership in the adoption story is simply this. Affirm their identity and respect how they self-identify. You know, we're in 2025, so everyone is so expressive and have individuality, and pronouns have changed, and culturally they align and they identify in many things, and we want to make sure that we're culturally appropriate when looking for placement for youth. We want to make sure that we're racially appropriate. We want to make sure that we're emotionally appropriate. Having those conversations can be uncomfortable, but they are very necessary for the best outcomes. You want to make sure that you're respecting their identity, asking them, what are your pronouns? What do you identify as? What are you looking for? Is it okay? For my adoption process, I had, I was African American, and the couple that wanted to take care of me were Caucasian. I didn't care what they were. They liked me and loved me, and they showed me some love and compassion and protection that I hadn't experienced before. But I got picked on for it. You know, I got picked on by my foster brothers and sisters. I got picked on by certain staff members by saying, you know, that's not going to go well. They're taking you because you're just a little black kid, and I didn't see it that way. But if someone would have had those contextual conversations with me prior to and affirmed my identity, it would have not made me feel like I was betraying my race or I was being a sellout when I was simply looking to be in a loving foster home or a loving adoption process permanency plan, right? So if someone would have assured me and affirmed me of who I was as an African American and who chose to love me and provide me with a permanency life, it shouldn't have made a difference, but it did. It weighed heavy on me and it made me feel a type of way. So my emotions was not prioritized. I felt away. And so we got to make sure that we're expressing the understanding of emotions, excitement and grief, pain, betrayal, anger for having to even go through this process because I had a family, my biological family, and now I'm going through this process. This is a stressful process. This is anxiety. I didn't ask for this, and now I'm going. And then what happens with this? I already had a biological family that brought me into the world. They didn't want me, and I'm going to go to a family that I have to interview with them. We have to meet in these settings that I might not even be comfortable with. I have a short window frame to a time frame to decide if this is going to go forth or not. These are the things that young people deal with. These are the things that you have to deal with, and these are the things that I dealt with. Um, Co-opting the story lets them help them define what adoption means. So you want to have that conversation to have break down adoption to them. When I heard adoption, I heard key things that my mind took. Adoption, parents' rights terminated. Never get to speak to your biological family again. You will move out of state, which was not true. I didn't even know that I could be adopted in the city. That's how uninformed I was. I thought they were going to ship me off to Tennessee, and I was going to have to never see anybody that I knew from my life or who had been with me in my journey thus far. So make sure that you're having these conversations about what adoption is and break it down to them and explain it to them in a level of a fifth grader. I tell them, but I'm grown and I still ask people when it's too complex for me. I say, break it down to me as a fifth grader. Okay. And youth needs adults who to understand that they can handle honesty without withdrawing. Don't rush conversations about fear or loss or loyalty. There's a part in this where you're changing your namesake, you're changing your legacy, you're changing your lineage as an aspect because you're taking on somebody else's namesake, you're taking on somebody else's family tree, and that has its complexities. Ask open-ended questions instead of assuming that we already have the answers. Next slide, please. So when Erica mentioned lifelong after adoption, she was absolutely correct. It has effect on me today. I am sitting here because of what we have found to be true about not just adoption, even though that is our topic and focus today, but just about permanency in general, just about child welfare experience in general. Cross it over, collaborate it, however you need to see fit. But from this, I have gathered that self-confidence, self-efficacy, and self-awareness is super important in this process when you're putting the young person in this driver's seat and you're giving them a voice and you're making them the co-author of their story. When you're not just solely writing their story for them and making all the decisions based upon your lens, your perspective, and your emotions and your feelings. Do you want to do the absolute best by the young person? Yes. And are there times that you feel that you're doing the absolute best? Probably so. Kudos to you. But have you brought in the input? Have you brought the young person, the youth, the child into the buy-in of what you're trying to accomplish for them? That is key. So when you talk about centered youth and having conversations, this gains life skills beyond the adoption day. And that is the key that we want to walk away from. This is all beyond the adoption day. The adoption day, yes, it is a glorious day. It is bringing families together, but you want to make sure that the young person is sustained beyond this time because we never know how these things will show up again and they will need these three components. So, hey, self-confidence. When youth make choices, they believe in their ability to make good ones. So self-confidence that I made the right choice. If it's a successful adoption, they made the right choice. If it happens to be unsuccessful, they know that they made some choices along the way that will build their confidence. They had critical thinking moments that will sustain them and teach them further outside of this experience, and they will learn to not make the same mistake twice. Self-efficacy, the gain in the belief that I can influence what happens to me. You have to have choices. We have to give people choices. You have a choice, I have a choice. And what separates people from good or bad, or right or wrong, or good consequences or bad, is the ability to choose what happens to us. And we want to make sure that they have that choice to feel like I made this choice for myself and I feel good about the choice. Whether I said I did not want to go with this family, whether I said I did, and even if I chose to, it did not work out. They had a choice in it. And I think that that helps with them in the long run. Self-awareness, they begin to understand the needs, the triggers, the boundaries, and their aspirations. After my failed adoption, my confidence was not good. It was not good, but I had a caseworker and I had people around me who said, you asked important questions. You did everything right. They validated me. They encouraged me. It just wasn't the right fit. And that is okay. That happens. Um, Self-advocacy, I understood that even though it didn't work out for me, I had made choices in my how I carried myself, how I conducted myself in school, and my behavior that I was getting ready for the next family. So I didn't allow it. If I didn't have these tools, then I would have just went off the rails, because I had, as a young youth, I did go off the rails when things didn't go right in my life. It just one pebble took me all the way down. But after this process, I learned that I did make some good choices. And if I continue to make good choices, then I will eventually reap the benefits and probably find a forever family. But if I didn't, I understand what my triggers are, I understand what my boundaries are, and I understand that I have other things that I can aspire to be. And so if I couldn't be a good adoptive permanency young adult, then I was going to be a good foster youth. Empowerment is just not about the adoption. It is about equipping people to thrive as adults. And so, depending on where you're at in adoption permanency, I know you see it as, oh, he's just 10 or he's just 11. It matters. It matters. You're planting seeds, and sometimes you don't always get to see the fruition of your seeds that you plant in these young people, whatever place that you're in their life in, because everyone in their life is paid to be there. Caseworkers paid to be there, teachers paid to be there, foster parents paid to be there. So whenever you come in contact with them, and wherever the journey is short or long, you're a gardener and you're planting a seed. And sometimes you don't always get to see it coming to fruition, but they really stick and remember what you did for them at 10 or what you showed them at 9. And someone else comes along years later and they're the sun. And then someone else comes along a year later and they're the water. So do not underestimate the time spent on the journey, whether it was a successful adoption permanency or not. Our goal isn't to be perfect. It is to be progressive. It is to grow and lasting and have lasting long case closures eventually. Next slide. Impactful elements. Everyone knows this. Listen, be honest, connect and learn, define expectations, and ask for feedback. Listen to truly understand. Don't listen and say, I just want to get it out the way and want to let them vent. Yeah, that's a part of it, but also listen to what's not being said. 80% of communication is nonverbal. So make sure that you're listening both ways and not just one. Be honest. Transparency reduces fear. I can't tell you how many times while I was in foster care that my foster parents lied to me for no apparent reason because they thought I couldn't handle the truth. But really, life had already showed me what truth looked like before I even got into foster care. So what you thought I couldn't handle, I really could handle. So please give these youth and young adults more benefit of the doubt that that honesty will not ruin them. It will not damage them, but will strengthen the relationship. And you'll see that later and how it builds trust. Connect and learn. Take time to understand their world beyond foster care. Take time to understand their world beyond their foster home or beyond what the paperwork says. In my extended foster care work, I met a young lady and can't tell you where I went because I was in all regions, but she said, and it was so profound, and Chelsea was there with me. She said, I wish I could just meet one person who has not read my case file. Just see me for who I am without judging me based upon the planning, the documentation, the reporting. Just one person who has met me without reading my file. I thought that was so profound. So get to know these young people and their likes and their colors and their favorite food and their favorite toy. And if they're a Harry Potter fan like me, and if you are a Harry Potter fan, I'm Gryffindor. If you're not Gryffindor, I'm sorry to hear that. But as I move on, and define expectations. Give these young people security and clarity and not just assume that everything is going to be predictable. Tell them that there's going to be pitfalls. Tell them there might be some ups and downs, challenges, but understand that you're going to be with them along the way and you're going to support them either way it goes. Clarity gives security, and we want them to feel secure in this process because all the groundwork that we're speaking of now, it helps either way, but it helps times two if it's an unsuccessful permanency adoption plan. If it doesn't go the way, everything that you're doing to build them up, it will not crumble. It will not fall because, oh, the adoption didn't go as planned. These things are still things that you can build upon after a successful or unsuccessful adoption. Understanding feedback is a real thing. So if you've given up the ownership of saying, hey, what did I do wrong? What did I not do well? What did I miss? Or what would you have wanted? It helps the youth see the collaboration as a real thing. We want them to see collaboration as a real thing and not something that is pretend. Give them a real thing. Collaboration, a real thing. Understanding a youth's cultural identity helps ensure process honors who they are and not just where they've been. Okay. Every conversation, even the hard ones, is a chance to build trust and models of wealthy and healthy connections. Next slide. Foundations of building trust, safety and support. Acknowledge the fears of possible rejection and betrayal. Avoid making promises you cannot keep. That is top tier, chef's kiss. Do not make promises that you cannot keep. I know you want to. And if you're like me, you're an empath and you feel things times 10, but you have to make sure that you have that discipline and that structure and that understanding. I cannot make a promise that I can't keep, right? The youth decision, keep the youth informed and update, small or big. Any update is an update for youth. Okay. Sometimes they don't know how to express or come to you and say, hey, what happened? Because they're scared of the rejection or the betrayal. So they just wait it out. But I promise you, when they're waiting, they're on pins and needles saying, okay, another day has come, no call. Another day has come, no email. Another day has come, no connection. So did they like me? Did they not like me? So give them a little relaxation and give them a little assurance like, hey, we're still in the process. Hey, they're still going through the training. There's some things that need to iron out. We got a visit set up, but they weren't able to make it, had to go out of town. Small updates, big updates. Please keep the youth informed and then follow through. Reliability builds safety. I can't tell you during extended foster care where these young people said, everyone thinks that we just don't want the help, but we really want people to be consistent. Everyone is just like a revolving door in our lives, and they come in and out, in and out. And when we get cool and when we trust someone and when we really think that we have a safe space to ask for help or to tell about our challenges and our struggles and trials, then we get a new caseworker. Now we got a new CASA worker. Now we got a new PAL worker. Now we're moving from home to home in 2 trash bags. You like nothing is forever and then nothing is consistent. So when you're doing this process, try to be as consistent as possible with your word, with your due diligence, with your understanding, and with your open-mindedness. And I promise you, it will sustain you during this process, and it will sustain the young person beyond this adoption day. Next slide.
All right, so moving into developing advocacy skills. So once we've built trust with youth, we can work on begin developing these skills and confidence to help them find and use their voice. So the goal here is for them to get to a place where they can identify their wants and needs. They can think critically when it comes to making decisions for their lives, and they can speak clearly and persuasively to communicate what they want to see happen. And then of course, problem solving when things aren't working out. So the important thing here is that advocacy does not just happen naturally. Youth don't just know how to do it if it is not learned and practiced. So just like learning to ride a bike, for instance, advocacy is a process. So if you think about teaching someone to ride a bike, you would probably start with getting them comfortable and familiar with the bike, maybe introducing them to all of the parts and their purpose, like this is what the brakes do, this is what the pedals do. And then when they're first learning to ride, you might provide training wheels and then gradually move toward more independence in that process. So in the same way, when it comes to developing advocacy skills for youth, we are taking them on a process. So we're moving from starting out by doing things for youth, maybe when they're younger, maybe when they're not as secure or confident. And then we're moving towards doing things with youth. And then ultimately, the goal in advocacy is to support youth to do things for themselves. So what does this look like? So I'm going to explain what this looks like generally, and then Chelsea is going to dive into specific examples. So we are going to make sure that we are teaching and practicing decision making. So this looks like starting with small choices and then moving on to bigger ones. So starting with everyday agency. So letting youth choose their clothing, choose how they want to style their hair, supporting them by taking them to, the hair salon to style their hair in the way that they've chosen, selecting their hobbies or extracurricular activities, talking through them with them. What are their interests? What are their likes or dislikes? What things might they want to pursue? And then also giving them snacks and food choices, talking to their foster parents, talking to them about, what food was important in their home prior, whether that be with their biological family and former foster homes, and giving them choices in the household around that. Now, obviously, they're not going to have choice around every single decision with that specifically, but it's just that opportunity to giving them agency daily in ways that we can depending on their age, of course, developmental level, what they're comfortable with. And then we kind of want to move into bigger personal life choices. So making friendship choices, talking through that with them, letting them provide input on things like summer camps or vacations that they might be going on, maybe down to deciding who they want to invite to a meeting or how they want to participate. And then we can move to building on those core permanency decisions. So choosing how much contact they want with important people in their lives, whether or not they do or don't want contact, and supporting and advocating for that. Letting them provide input and direction on permanency planning, and then just offering support that you are able to give them to encourage advocacy. And then in addition to teaching and practicing decision making, we are going to also model advocacy for them. So demonstrating in meetings what it looks like to respectfully voice an opinion. So maybe they're not in a place where they feel comfortable speaking up yet, but they want to participate in a meeting and they've told you, what they want in that meeting. Maybe it is important for them to have ongoing visits with their grandmother. And so you're going to model in that meeting for them how to speak up and advocate for that desire that they want, so that they are able to see what that looks like in action. And then you can move into also role playing and coaching. Rehearsing real life scenarios with them, starting where they want to. Maybe it's preparing for an upcoming meeting they have with their ad litem. Maybe it's a meeting with a CPA's case manager, or a 504 meeting at school, or talking to a judge. So if they don't know where to start or seem shy, or just need practice, you can role play and coach, and offer gentle guidance to them in that particular situation. And then, of course, we want to encourage reflection. So once a youth does get to a point where they are advocating for themselves, we want to make sure that we're processing it with them afterwards, asking them how they felt about their choice. How did they feel about how they presented their choice? What, if anything, they might want to do differently next time? Is there any support that they wish that they had, that they lacked in this particular situation, that they wish that they had next time? So any way that we can encourage and encourage reflection with them. So youth aren't just going to be like suddenly ready to make these big adoption related decisions. So we just kind of want to point out that it is building these skills by having their voice honored in everyday life, from the small decision making, so that we can build on that and help them to be at a place where they do feel comfortable advocating for themselves. So every small choice is essentially a rehearsal for those bigger ones. And we want to make sure that when we are affirming and centering youth, that we are affirming and centering youth when we are teaching them advocacy. We know that youth thrive when their identity and their voice is honored, when they can see themselves reflected in the process, when they can see their choices respected, even in those small matters. That is how they are going to gain confidence to advocate in those bigger decision making. So we want to make sure that in centering them, we're recognizing their strengths and their identity, that we are celebrating their progress. And this includes small steps, and acknowledge their progress in speaking up or in making choices, not just in the big decisions, but in those smaller ones. Of course, creating those opportunities for choice, like we talked about in the day-to-day life and those bigger decisions. And then one I want to emphasize is sharing power in planning and decision making, something that David had mentioned. This looks like moving from adult driven decisions to collaborative decision making whenever possible. So this should be a progression, so that by the time a youth is moving towards adulthood, they are the ones leading that decision making, and they have your support throughout that process. So what does this look like? For adult-centered decision making, it's where adults are making decisions for youth. They may or may not share information about that decision. Youth might be informed, but not necessarily invited to participate. And in this scenario, power is resting almost entirely with the adult. But collaborative and more youth-centered decision making is where the adult and youth are making decisions with each other, alongside each other. Information is shared openly, and it's in a youth-friendly language that they can understand. So making sure that you're not just explaining things to them for the sake of explaining them, but they actually understand what you're explaining. And also youth are asked for their input. So you're explaining the situation, the choice before them, and then they are asked for their input and actually given real choices, and they can see how their voice shaped that specific outcome. So power is shared in that scenario, and adults are guiding, but youth are active participants. So just to give a quick example, we can take like therapy, which is super common for youth. Involved in foster care. Adult-centered decision would be the adult chooses the therapist, they schedule the appointment, and they tell the youth afterward, hey, we're doing therapy. I found you this particular therapist. This is when the appointment is, and then you expect them to go and participate. But a collaborative, more youth-centered approach would be, I'm going to sit down alongside the youth. I'm going to talk with the youth and explain why therapy is being recommended. And then I'm going to actually ask them what they think about that. I'm going to ask them, if they, what they think about it. Obviously, it matters whether they do or don't want to participate. Asking them what's important to them in a therapist. Do they, prefer a specific specialization, breaking that down for them? Do they prefer a specific gender? And then if the youth is willing, sitting alongside them, viewing therapist profiles together, asking if they have a preference on which therapist that they like from these profiles. Maybe there's a day or time, maybe they have some extracurricular activities and things that are going on. And so you want to make sure that it's accommodating for their schedule. And then scheduling with the therapist at that point. This may not happen in one single conversation, but the important piece is that collaborative process. You're doing it together. You're allowing youth to make those decisions that are impacting their lives. And that is honestly going to impact how they show up in that therapeutic relationship as well. So now that we've explored how to build trust and support for youth voice, we're going to look next at what that looks like in practice, how we can involve youth in real decisions from recruitment to circles of support to adoption day.
Thank you, Erica and David. So let's try to bring us home to the home stretch here. So, involving youth in the adoption journey. So at this stage, our focus is really on informing and involving youth from the very beginning. A lot of the times, young people don't even realize that they are in the adoption unit or a part of the adoption recruitment programs that they are involved in. So with this unknown, the process can feel confusing or even scary to the youth. So we need to start with being transparent and transparency at the forefront. Explain what the adoption process looks like step by step and what it means for them personally. Ask them what they want and what they need to feel supported. Sometimes it's as simple as explaining, here's what adoption means, and here's what the process looks like, here's what happens next. Next, you want to introduce them to the different adoption programs that are out there. Some of the adoption programs out there, like the Heart Gallery, Wendy's Wonderful Kids, Match Events, there's so many. So don't just mention it to them, but show them what these adoptions programs are and what they have entailed. For example, if you're talking about the Heart Gallery, pull up the website with them. Let them see the profiles on there and talk to them about how the families learn about the youth on those profiles. You can even connect them to your local Heart Gallery representative. If the youth has questions, they can get those questions answered there. And same thing with the Wendy's Wonderful Kids program. Help them understand the role of the recruiter and maybe even schedule a casual meet and greet with the recruiter. This can really alleviate some of that fear of the unknown on what these Heart Gallery, what these adoption programs actually mean. Transparency, like I said, is very key here. So be honest and let them know that being a part of these programs as well doesn't guarantee an adoption. A lot of youth would say, well, if I signed up for this adoption program, and I've been in it for 5 months, 6 months. Why am I not adopted yet? You told me I would be. So being transparent from the upfront and help them understand that this process can take time and that they are not obligated to participate if it doesn't feel right to them. They have the right to say, I don't want to be in the program right now, and that's okay. We as an adults always change our mind. So we need to give grace to the youth that we're working with as well. Encourage choice here and make them feel empowered at the same time. Some youth will want to be very, very involved and some won't. Like I said, that's okay. The goal is to make sure that they know that they have a voice and that they are doing what feels comfortable for them. Like David mentioned, you can ask them what's important to you in a family, or are there things that are definite no for you? Understanding those boundaries and preferences help guide recruitment in a way that's respectful and meaningful for them. And finally, there's when there is a family identified, prepare them for those real life interactions that come with potentially meeting them for the first time. Ask them like, what do you want to say? What do you want to ask? As a recruiter, we would role play. You can role play ahead of time, like Erica mentioned. Help them write out a few questions and talking points, and that way they feel more confident and less nervous about these interactions. Just like our big life events and our big interview or our big first date that we're going on, preparation can really help with those nerves and make the youth feel not so overwhelmed during that first interaction. When we inform and involve youth early and give them real life choices, we're just not preparing them for adoption, but we're really helping them practice self-advocacy skills that they can carry far beyond the adoption process in their life. Next slide, please. Okay, so once youth are informed and involved in the process, the next step is shared choices and voice to really give them space to be a part of selecting who they might live and eventually call family. For older youth, especially, one of the most meaningful ways to do this is to invite them to review the family or the life books that the family has. These books can give a glimpse into the family's world, their home, their routines, their personal life, and help you start imagining what life will look like in the future. If a family doesn't have a life book, we can always ask them to help make one or even create a digital version. Nowadays with all our technology, I mean, it's very easy to do. So that represents them as a family. This could include, like I said, pictures of their home, the youth's potential bedroom, their extended family, pets, activities they enjoy, their church, communities, or even their go-to restaurants or go-to parks. Like, what do they do? Like, I would want to know these kind of things. So, and to create equal representation, we can also invite the youth to make something themselves if that's what they would like to do. They can write a short letter, a drawing, share some pictures, or list some of their favorite things. This allows both sides to learn about each other before they meet, and it helps you feel seen, and it says, this is your story matters too. For those of us who have attended RAS meetings, the review, approval, and selection meetings, we know that it's helpful to look through those family profiles, hear their home studies, hear from their caseworkers. So we need to think about how we can use a similar process for youth, just like we do, and it helps us weigh in on those options. Also, when it is a safe and appropriate, we can also include connected biological family members in this discussion. Sometimes kin or extended family members are unable to adopt due to certain circumstances, but they still deeply care about their youth or their kin. Allowing them to share their perspective in the selection process can help maintain healthy connections and prevent the youth from feeling like they have lost a piece of their identity. As David and Erica spoke about earlier, some youth may feel like adoption could be a betrayal to their biological family, and using this strategy can help take away some of that fear. It's also a reminder that belonging isn't just about a legal adoption. It's about maintaining safe and long life relationships, and it gives the youth a sense of themselves. So when we share power in the family selection, we're not just inviting feedback, but we're showing youth that their voice carries weight, and it reinforces that this is their life and that this is their future. And next slide, please. Okay, so this is such an important step here, planning together. Once a family has been selected, we have to intentionally involve the youth in planning those pre-placement visits. Once, often we simply just follow or do the minimum standards. For example, DFPS requires three pre-placement visits. But the truth is, there is no magic number that fits every child. If a young person says that they need, you know, 8, 9, 10 pre-placement visits, we should accommodate that to their comfort and their readiness, letting them know that this isn't just a checkbox, but this is at their pace and what matters to them. Work with the youth and the family to decide what those visits will look like as well, where they happen, how long they last, who's involved in those initial pre-placement visits. Those moments set the tone for what could become a forever family. So they should be tailored to the use pace and not our timeline. As professionals, we often are on very tight schedules because of our caseloads or our, all the work that we have to get done throughout the day or the month or the week. But we have to remember that these are people's lives. They're just not placements. So rushing the process can lead to a disruption that can lead to deeper trauma, not only for the youth who's had past trauma, but also for the family as well. And the next point is, and there's adoption day. This day is can be everything for the youth. This is the day that they probably have dreamed about. This is a milestone for them. Involve them in the planning and what that day looks like. Who do they want there? What do they want to wear? Do they want photos and pictures to be taken? Do they want to have a celebration afterwards? Think about how we plan our big moments in our lives and how we want it to feel special and personable. It's the same thing that we need to consider for our youth. Our youth deserve the same level of care and also respect. If they don't want a big celebration and they just want to keep things intimate with just them and their family, that's okay too. I know me and David and Erica, we've talked like we have different personalities. Me and David are very big and showy, like want to have a big celebration. And Erica's like, what, if it was me, I would probably want something more intimate, and that's okay. So we need to ask our youth that we're working with, what does that look like for them? When I was an adoption recruiter, I had a sibling group who really wanted their biological mom to attend their adoption day. And it was a kinship adoption, but they were terrified that their mom wouldn't be accepted or even allowed in the courtroom. And on the day of the hearing, she stood outside the courtroom, afraid to walk in and with all this fear. But once the team and the family invited her in, everyone just embraced and shared that moment. And it was completely changed the tone of the day. It was powerful. It showed that the kids that the love doesn't have to be just exclusive, that they could have both permanency and connection. So it was a very special moment for all of us. And when we do include youth, when it's safe with their connected adults, it ensures that this is their story, your family, this is their day. So it really centers the youth's voice when asking them like their input and showing that they have input. And we follow and whenever we do follow through on their feedback and their ideas, we build reliability as well. And some of them that have been missing that their whole life. So when youth are trusted to help design their own transition, it transforms adoption on something that's happening to them into something that's happening with them. Okay, next slide, please. Circles of support. Yes. Circles of support meetings are so much more than just a requirement. They're an opportunity to model shared power and give youth real experience leading decisions about their own future. We often say that we want youth to have a voice and that this meeting is one of the ways that we can really show it and mean it to them. The first thing that I always like to do is I like to educate youth about what this meeting actually is. Be transparent, explain that this meeting is for them, not just another one of the hundreds of meetings that they probably have sat in throughout their life, but let them know that this meeting is all about them. This is all about your goals, your future, and what we can do as a team to help support you in that. Let them know that they're right, what their rights are as well, that they can request a circle of support every 6 months if they want to, no matter where they're placed, and that they can choose whether it's in person or virtual or or no matter where they're placed at. If they're placed out of the region, they can still have that in person if they want to. When we were talking to young adults who had aged out of care, a lot of them, they did not know any of this information. They did not, they said they sat in what they thought was a circle of support, but they didn't really know what that was. So next, prepare them together. Make sure that youth get plenty of notice ahead of time. That's another thing we heard from youth who had aged out, that they were hearing about these meetings the day of, or the morning of the meeting, and they'd had no time to really mentally prepare or think about what they wanted out of that meeting, or who they want there, or even what they wanted to avoid talking about. So ask them, do you want to lead the meeting? Do you want to have someone else moderate this meeting? What are the topics that are most important to you to discuss? And are there any that you don't want on the agenda that we can just avoid? You can even invite them to help set up the agenda themselves if that's something that they're comfortable with. Maybe they want to start by celebrating a goal that they met, or by talking about, next steps after graduation, whatever feels right to them. And even with the setup of the meeting space, you can send a message by inclusion by letting them know that, like, how would you like the chairs to be arranged? Many of us on this call have either facilitated a meeting or completed trainings or attended trainings before, and it's a very important the way we want our room to be set up. You can ask them, do they want the chairs to be in a circle? Do they want to be at a round table, or do they want it more informal? Those little choices give them ownership of the meeting. And finally, just create a supportive space. Make sure that the people in the room are the ones that the youth actually want there. And that could include other people outside their child welfare team, their teacher, their pastor, coach, biological relatives, whoever they want there, and they feel safe there. We need to honor that as well. Also, for example, if a youth feels anxious in school, don't hold these circles of support meetings at school. Create a welcoming environment instead. You can also personalize the space to reflect who they are. If they love sports, maybe bring a few small decorations or visuals that tie into that. If their favorite color is blue, maybe we're on the whiteboard, we're writing, our goals and stuff in a blue marker. So if they have favorite snacks, and if it's possible, we have a budget. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. If it's possible, have their favorite snacks on the table. When you feel that level of care and personalization, they're more likely to engage authentically, because they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel included in this conversation. And at the end of the day, circle support meetings gives us a chance to model what good partnership really looks like for the youth, which is shared decision making, respect, and trust. So when youth feel their voice is being valued, they begin to see themselves not just as a kid in CPS, but as the authors of their own future.
Thank you, Chelsea. So today we've talked about what it truly means for youth to be centered and heard in their adoption journey, and not just present and physically there, but actually active participants in shaping their future. So we started by grounding ourselves in why youth engagement matters, because participation is a right and it builds trust and belonging. And then we heard lived experience from our lived expert that reminded us validation and encouragement are the foundation of partnership. And finally, we saw what this looks like in practice. So from involving youth in recruitment and family selection to creating spaces like circle of support meetings where youth are leading the way. And so when we're honoring youth voice, we're not just helping them find permanency. Hopefully we've emphasized that enough throughout the presentation, but we're helping them build self-confidence, advocacy skills, and a sense of ownership over their lives. Empowerment starts when adults are willing to share power. And so it doesn't happen in just one conversation or in one meeting, but it is built moment by moment and choice by choice. And every time that we are asking for youth input, and when we are really listening to them and involving them in decisions and following through on our word, we're teaching them that their voice matters and that the adults in their lives can be trusted to listen. So as you go back to work, we just want you to kind of think about this question. What's one step that you will take this week to center youth voice. Maybe it's inviting them to co-create their profile, giving them a choice about a visit, asking them how they want their circle of support meeting to go. Whatever it is, we just hope that you will continue that, not just this week, but throughout your professional journey. So thank you so much for being here and for all the ways that you are helping youth be centered and heard. We are going to go ahead and stop the recording now, and we will accept questions.